Welcome to Mind Research Rewired. We unveil scientific truths to transform confusion into clear thinking. Unlock a sharper, more effective you based on proven research. Subscribe now and elevate your life.
Have you ever stopped to wonder if your mind is truly just one single thing? Or if maybe there's like a second consciousness hiding just beneath the surface, totally outside your awareness?
It sounds like something out of science fiction, doesn't it? But it's a question that, surprisingly, people have been wrestling with for centuries, actually.
Right.
And what's really amazing is how this almost prophetic idea from way back in the 19th century found such strong confirmation and groundbreaking science over 100 years later.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're exploring this incredible link, starting with a classic, really fascinating idea from 1844 by A.L. Wigan.
Okay.
And then we'll jump forward to see how modern neurophysiology, especially Roger Sperry's Nobel Prize-winning stuff with split brain patients, brought Wigan's, pretty radical idea right back into the scientific conversation.
Yeah, the split brain work is key here.
So our mission really is to unpack whether Wigan's sort of prophetic vision holds up against the science and, what that might mean for how we see ourselves.
And for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on Roland Puchetti's really insightful 1989 essay. It's called Two Brains, Two Minds, Wigan's Theory of Mental Duality. It does a great job digging into Wigan and connecting the dots to the later research.
Okay, so let's get into Wigan himself. It's 1844. He publishes The Duality of the Mind. And his main claim was, incredibly bold for the time.
Absolutely.
He basically argued that if just one brain hemisphere is a complete tool for thought, capable of emotions, reason, everything we call mind, then humans, since we have two brain hemispheres, we must necessarily have two minds.
Two distinct minds. And he wasn't just, throwing ideas out there. He saw the two cerebral hemispheres not as like halves of one thing, but as two separate, complete organs.
Like two eyes.
Exactly, like two eyes. That was his analogy. Functioning similarly, potentially independently.
That's quite a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But what really convinced him? Was there a specific trigger?
Well, yeah. There was this really striking discovery he made early on during an autopsy. He found a patient where, get this, one entire hemisphere was just gone.
Wow, completely.
Apparently so. Yet this person had been conversing rationally and even written verses just days before they died.
With only one hemisphere function.
Right, and that experience just deeply cemented his belief that, each hemisphere could function on its own.
Okay, I can see how that would be pretty persuasive.
Yeah.
But Pucchetti jumps in here, right? He points out some problems people would have seen immediately.
He does. Some pretty obvious conceptual hurdles. Like, okay, if we do have two minds, why don't we feel like two people in one head? Why aren't we constantly aware of two separate streams of thought?
Good point. You don't usually feel like you're having two conversations internally at once.
Exactly. And Pucchetti also asks, does having two brains automatically mean two minds? We have two nostrils, but we don't have two separate senses of smell, do we? It all feeds into one perception.
Right, it's not a one-to-one mapping necessarily. So these were big questions hanging over Wigan's theory, and that's where the modern science really comes in and shakes things up.
It really does. And that brings us straight to Roger Sperry and his work, the Nobel Prize-winning work on split brain patients.
So these are people who had surgery.
Right. They had their corpus callosum severed. That's the main bundle of nerves connecting the two hemispheres. It was often done really as a last resort for severe epilepsy.
And Sperry found this clear disconnection syndrome. But you're saying it wasn't obvious all the time?
Not at all in everyday life, usually. You could chat with them, they'd interact, seem perfectly fine. The effects, the really fascinating stuff, only showed up under specific controlled lab tests.
Okay, like what kind of tests?
Well, one of the simplest but clearest was a touch test. Take a right-handed patient, okay? Put an object, maybe a key, in their right hand. They can name it instantly. It's a key. Easy. Because the right hand sends signals to the left hemisphere, and that's usually where language ability resides, the speaking hemisphere.
Makes sense. So the crucial part, what if you put the key in their left hand?
Now that's different. The left hand connects to the right hemisphere, which is typically non-speaking or mute. So if you ask them what's in their left hand, they might say, I don't know, or I'm not holding anything. They can't verbally identify it.
But do they know what it is on some level?
Yes. That's the mind-bending part. They can't say key, but if you ask them to reach behind a screen with their left hand and pick out the object they just felt from a group of items,
They can find the key.
they pick the key. Every time. Their left hand, controlled by the right brain, knows exactly what it felt, even though the speaking left brain is completely unaware.
Wow. That's clear evidence of two separate streams of awareness, isn't it?
It really points strongly in that direction. Two independent knowing centers.
And then there's the visual test, the one with the flashing words, the tachistoscope.
Oh yeah, the taxable experiment. Classic Sperry. So the patient stares at a dot in the middle of a screen.
Uh-huh.
And the word taxable is flashed very, very quickly. So fast that tax goes only to the left visual field.
Which connects to the right non-speaking hemisphere.
Correct. And ABL goes to the right visual field, connecting to the left speaking hemisphere.
Okay.
So you ask the patient, what did you see? And they'll say,
ABLV, because that's what the speaking hemisphere saw.
exactly. They verbally report ABE. But then you ask them to point with their left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, remember to the word they saw from a choice of words.
And the left hand points to tax.
Bingo! Point straight to tax. The speaking person saw able, the non-speaking person controlling the left hand saw tax. It's just a stunning demonstration.
So for most of us, people without the split brain surgery,
For us, yeah, that corpus callosum is working constantly, sharing the information. Tax and able get integrated instantly, seamlessly. We just see taxable, no conflict.
so the split brain studies don't necessarily mean we have two fully separate conscious minds operating all the time, but
Yeah.
they show the potential is there. They provide a model.
Exactly. They provide this powerful empirical model showing that mental duality is physically possible in the brain, just like Wigan had sort of intuited way back when.
It really gives his idea some scientific legs to stand on. But Puccetti comes back in here and says Wigan maybe didn't quite nail his own theory. He misstated it.
Yeah, Puccetti argues there was a bit of a contradiction. Wigan was right, he thought, that each hemisphere is a distinct organ of thought, capable of its own will.
Okay.
But Wigan also said that in healthy brains, the two work together perfectly, giving only one result, like his two eyes, one vision analogy, and that created a problem.
The double vision problem. If we have two minds, why don't we perceive things doubly?
Precisely. It led to that paradox. If each mind is complete, why isn't our experience doubled up?
So how does Puccetti resolve this? This seems like the core of the refinement.
It is. Puccetti makes a really crucial distinction, one Wigan didn't explicitly make. He separates the idea of the human being as an individual organism, the biological entity, from the human being as a person.
Okay, organism versus person. What's the difference in this context?
The person is the center of consciousness, the complex-minded entity, the you that experiences things. Puccetti's refined theory is this. The human organism, with its two cerebral hemispheres, is actually the biological substrate, the home, for two persons.
Two persons in one body, each with one mind.
Each with one mind, yes. So at the level of the organism, maybe there is something like double vision happening neurologically, processing inputs twice, but each mind linked to its hemisphere only experiences single vision.
Why? How does that work?
Because, crucially, neither cerebrum has introspective access to the conscious contents of the other. Your left hemisphere person can't directly experience what your right hemisphere person is thinking or seeing, and vice versa. They are parallel, independent, conscious streams.
Wow. Okay, that sidesteps the double vision paradox neatly. It's not that you see double, it's that the organism processes twice, but each conscious, you only gets one feed.
That's the idea. And Puccetti ties it into evolution. Vertebrates evolved with two main neural clusters, two primitive brains, essentially.
Right.
And the corpus callosum, especially in mammals like us, didn't evolve primarily to fuse consciousness into one unified whole. Its main job, according to this view, might actually be to duplicate the conscious experience
Duplicate it. Why?
for the mutual benefit of the two separate cerebra, the two persons. It ensures both get the necessary information to function, but its other key role is precisely to prevent subjective double-mindedness.
Ah, so it helps share info and prevents the confusing, subjective experience of having two minds seeing two things.
Exactly. Imagine trying to swing through trees or hunt if you literally perceived two overlapping realities. The system evolved to give each internal person a clear single view while still benefiting from having two processing units.
That's a really different way to think about the corpus callosum, not just integrator, but also duplicator and maybe separator of experience.
It is. And this whole idea, this potential for duality, raises big questions about normally functioning brains too, right? Not just split brain patients.
Like what?
Well, if this duality is sort of the default state, the theory suggests that even in you and me, the dominant hemisphere, usually the left, the speaking one, might be exerting a kind of unconscious inhibitory influence over the other one, keeping it in check.
So the left brain might be shushing the right brain most of the time.
In a manner of speaking, yes. Through the corpus callosum, it might be suppressing some of the independent activity or consciousness of the non-dominant hemisphere.
Which leads us to what happens if that inhibition fails or is disrupted somehow. Does that explain things like the alien hand?
That's exactly where this connects. Alien hand syndrome, mostly seen in split brain patients, but sometimes in others with certain brain damage, is just fascinating and kind of eerie.
Tell us about some examples. The descriptions are wild.
They really are. You have cases where a patient's left hand just suddenly does something completely unexpected and seemingly unintended by the person who can talk about it. Like one source describes a patient's left hand suddenly starting to slap their chest like Tarzan during a test. Another one, the patient's left hand actively reaching out to stop the right hand from doing something, like the hands are fighting.
Wow, actual conflict between the hands.
Yes. And patients often talk about it strangely. They might say, my hand did that, almost like it's not their hand, like it's an external force.
I did that.
Exactly, not I did that. Or the example where a patient is asked to touch their nose with their finger, and the left hand guides the finger to their mouth instead. These aren't just random spasms.
No, they sound coordinated, purposeful, even if unwanted by the speaking mind.
Right. They require planning, coordination, awareness of the body's position. They are complex actions. So, what does Prochetti, looking at decades of these observations by researchers like Bogan, conclude?
What's the interpretation?
The key insight is the patient who is surprised, the one saying, my hand did that, is the person based in the speaking, usually left hemisphere.
Okay.
But the person based in the non-speaking right hemisphere, the one who initiated the action like slapping the chest or redirecting the finger, that person is not surprised. They are presumably fully conscious of what they were doing and why.
So the alien hand is only alien to one of the two minds inside. The other mind is perfectly aware of its own actions.
That's the inference. And it leads to a really important point about where these abilities, the memory, foresight, intention needed for these alien actions come from.
They weren't created by the surgery.
Exactly. Prochetti argues they didn't just spring into existence because the corpus callosum was cut. That wouldn't make much sense. Instead, these capacities were likely always there in the non-dominant hemisphere, just hidden or suppressed by that inhibitory influence from the speaking hemisphere, acting through the intact corpus callosum in a normal brain. Removing that inhibition just unmasks them.
It lets the other person express themselves physically, sometimes in ways that conflict with the dominant person.
Precisely. And Prochetti calls this the more parsimonious or simpler explanation. It doesn't require creating new consciousness out of nowhere, just revealing what was already potentially there.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We started with Wigan back in 1844 with this seemingly wild idea about two brains, two minds.
Which seemed maybe flawed at first, a bit paradoxical.
Right. But then, decades later, split brain research, Sperry's work, provides this incredible window into how the hemispheres can function independently.
Yeah, the touch tests, the taxable experiment, showing clear signs of separate awareness.
And when you reframe Wigan's idea through Puccetti's lens, the distinction between the organism and the person, leading to the idea of two persons, each with one mind inside one body.
Then the split brain evidence starts to look like strong support for that kind of underlying duality. The idea that neither conscious person can directly access the other's experience explains why we don't feel double.
And phenomena like the alien hand, where one hemisphere acts in ways that surprise the other, suggest these aren't just passive systems, but potentially separate centers of will and intention.
With capacities that were likely always there, just usually kept under wraps by the dominant speaking hemisphere in an intact brain.
So it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? A question for you, the listener, to maybe chew on.
Definitely. If these capacities of our other hemisphere, our non-dominant one, aren't created by brain surgery, but are merely suppressed or hidden, what does that really imply?
Yeah, what does it mean for how we understand consciousness itself, or free will, or even just those everyday feelings of, internal conflict or intuition that seems to come from nowhere?
Could there be aspects of you, quiet observers, or even actors, operating just outside the spotlight of your main speaking awareness? It's a fascinating and maybe slightly unsettling possibility to consider.
Yes, that is something for all of us to think about. We have come to the end of today's deep dive. If you like the content of our podcast and learned something useful, please subscribe to support our channel. We will continue to unveil cutting-edge scientific papers to bring clarity to your thinking and elevate your life. Thank you.